And they can't hear us right now. I'm not sending out all that sponsor stuff again. I don't want to. We're going to clog up the Twitter feed enough as it is.
Google Drive.
I hope people don't knock on my door. I should have put a little sign. I think I will. If I can spell right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Admissions Live. We are coming to you at a special time today, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, May 30th. A quick rescheduled show from last night. And I want to welcome you all who are joining us. Hopefully we have some first-timers out there. This is Admissions Live, the weekly web show for admissions professionals. We are part of the Higher Ed Live network, which is all about digital development and professional empowerment. We've got Kyle James on today's show, and we're talking about virtual campus tours in admissions. We've got lots and lots of examples to throw your way, and we'll be sending them out over Twitter using the Admissions Live hashtag. You can also follow along the back channel on higheredlive.com/live. And if you're watching this in the archives, you'll be able to see all the resources that we tweeted out during the show right in the bottom of the page. So I want to get right to the show, but before we do that, we got to give a quick shout out to the sponsors that make Admissions Live possible. Admissions Live is sponsored by Welcome to College. They believe it's all in the campus visit, and that's what we're talking today. We're not talking about on campus, we're talking about virtual visits, but Welcome to College has created a web and mobile application to help institutions measure and manage their most critical recruitment tool, the college visit. With over 15,000 ratings on Welcome to College's website, you can check out how your institution is stacking up. Admissions Live is sponsored by Zinch. They are a service of Chegg that will connect 60% of college-bound students with their college or university in 2013. Zinch provides an arsenal of both inbound and outbound matching to help you find and attract best fit students to your institution. Learn more about Zinch by emailing outreach@zinch.com to set up a free consultation, or tweet @socialadmission to get connected. Admissions Live is also sponsored by Integral. Check out their latest white paper, the Class of 2016 Community Analysis, to learn how creating communities for incoming students can improve admissions yield. And last but certainly not least, Admissions Live is sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. La Roche College used Scavenger for open house events, and it helped them learn more about prospective student interests. You can see how they did that on the Scavenger University's blog. And as I mentioned, today's guest is Kyle James. He is CEO and co-founder at nuCloud and the founder at .edu Guru. I'm going to give welcome to Kyle because I need a drink of water. I'm going to bring him onto the show. Hi, Kyle.
How's it going today?
Very good.
Yeah, we do have so much stuff here to kind of even try to fill in all this today.
So much.
Big pack. I mean, anybody that's ever seen a presentation I've done, they always know I try to do too much. I can't help it.
We've got a lot going on. So, and you have some background in higher ed as well, right?
I do. Yep. I spent 6 years working at Wofford College down in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Role of IT marketing. Spent 3 years after that at HubSpot up in Boston. Anybody that's familiar with that little inbound marketing company, they're blogging, that other stuff. Living on kind of the bloody cutting edge, and now kind of really laser focused on this virtual tour interactive map system and kind of the platform that we're really building with that on nuCloud.
Awesome. So I know we've got a lot of resources, and we're going to share a lot of different examples of how different institutions are using them. And a lot of times you find that it's kind of a enterprise or university-wide solution that colleges are looking for? Or do you see admissions offices specifically going after the virtual tour? I know we want to talk a lot about how this is going to affect recruitment today, but I'm wondering on your end of things what you usually see.
It really depends. I mean, there are kind of the 2, maybe 3 audience that drive that boat. A lot of times it's admission focused because most people realize like that's the majority of revenue. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that. The other, sometimes we see like visitor centers for bigger institutions that come looking for more of the interactive map solution. We've kind of tried to solve them both in one, where it's like an interactive map is always a virtual tour, but a virtual tour is not always an interactive map. It's just, is it more a little bit controlled than not? Sometimes we'll see general marketing, but yeah, it's usually kind of the visitor center, but mostly admission people.
Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, we're going to talk about why this is important for admissions and recruitment.
Totally.
Totally going to talk about that. And I've got a few resources from the nuCloud blog that I'm going to tweet out for folks. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you found influential for recruitment and kind of bring folks up to speed on that?
Yeah, I think the first one that you're going to kind of share is the physical campus tour is the most influential recruitment activity. Some data that actually came out of Noel Levitz. Everybody knows Noel Levitz. Everybody loves their data. I especially love their data because they're putting all this stuff about, prospective students out there. And one of the beliefs that we've had, and I'm sure you can kind of back this up, and anybody out there in admission, if you can get a student to physically come to campus and take a tour, the odds of them applying go up exponentially, right? I mean, that's one of the most important things. It's a gut feel we have. Well, Noel Levitz actually come out with the data that says, yes, that is in fact the truth. Which I'm super excited about because we're web people, we're marketers online. We're thinking, well, how do we get people to take that next step? And that's where a virtual tour and interactive map really tie in to say, hey, look at this fun place you could come visit. Don't you want to click on this nice little schedule a visit button to the right or left of it to take that next step? So it's driving people down that marketing funnel, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, that call to action that you have in there is really important because I'm sure you've heard this before. If you make your virtual tour really good, well, why would anyone want to come to campus? And if coming to campus is the biggest converter of applicants to enrollees or prospects to applicants, do we want to dissuade people from actually coming to visit the campus?
Yeah, and that's kind of a silly idea.
Silly, yeah.
Because one, I mean, yes, there are, as we like to kind of call them, stealth applicants, right? There are these kids that will apply that we don't know where they come from.
Sure.
At least they'll explore something like a virtual tour. But if I'm a prospective student that has any sort of mind at all, or if I'm a parent that it's about to invest tens of thousands, if not $100,000 plus on an education, I want to physically visit that location.
Yeah.
This virtual tour is nice and pretty, but I want to go there and touch things.
Absolutely.
It's a big investment. You don't go online car shopping for a brand new car and buy it on the spot, do you? You want to test drive it, right?
Absolutely.
We're talking about something even more expensive than that.
Yeah, and I know that you have other data about increasing visits. So
The second one is kind of a little news article that we found that talks about schools report a 30% increase in campus visits thanks to virtual tours. So having this virtual tour online actually increases that. And I think the whole reason behind that is the call to action. We talk about us on the line all the time, online. Steve Krug, don't make me think, the master of this whole concept. People do what you tell them to. If I'm on a virtual tour and it tells me right here, schedule visit, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I think I'm going to do it.
Right.
They need that nudge to even know that's an option.
Right, and that's a great point. We talk a lot on Admissions Live about how complicated the admissions process is for a student. And just having that simple, this is what you should do next, is helpful for them. I just watched this virtual tour. I like this school. Well, it looks like now the next step would be to schedule a visit and meet with an admissions counselor. So that's a really great point.
Totally. They want to know what to do. And I think most people that get these tied together, or the schools that were actually in this report, were doing that.
Yep.
We're doing that. And it makes a big difference. 30%, like imagine that, 30% increase in students actually visiting campus. Like, well, what'd that do for your school?
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge. It's definitely a number that is always on our table. How many visitors did we have to this program last year? How many visitors did we have in individual visits? Who came on tours? Did we have groups? All of those kinds of things are definitely metrics that every admissions office is looking at. So,
and you break it down really simply. Like if a normal tour has 3 students on it, add a whole extra person to every single one of those tours.
Right.
Kind of like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That's a big number there.
It's a big number. Awesome. So other kinds of benefits that we can look at when we're thinking about virtual tours, and I don't know if you have any kind of handle of what kind of what colleges are offering now. Is the number of schools that are offering virtual tours a pretty high percentage, but is it then, what are they calling their virtual tour and what really is a
Yeah.
virtual tour? It seems to me that most colleges and universities get that students want to see something
Hmm.
about their campus online, whether that's some pictures, that's their virtual tour, or whether it's something that's interactive, something that actually feels more like a tour. What kind of a handle do you have on that, and why should we be investing? Why should we be looking this summer as we're looking at projects to take on? Why should we be investing in the virtual tour at this point?
It's a great question, and you're right. Like the majority of schools, I don't know the exact number. If I were to guess, I'd say probably 80% of schools out there, higher education, probably have something that they consider a virtual tour. Some even consider that a PDF of campus, right? Everybody's got that. But if it's like some pictures, is it some YouTube videos? Is it a full-fledged virtual tour? It's all over the board, and there really is no standard. And maybe that's okay. But yeah, they're all doing it. I guess the reason that we talk to a lot of schools is they've got something in place, but they did it 4 years ago and they're just not happy with it anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think 4 years ago, were you even using Twitter 4 years ago? Like,
Right.
Twitter was this concept of this cool thing that geeky people played with, but maybe you had 100 followers or 100 people or whatever, and that was like a big deal.
Right.
Now it's become this whole marketing channel and all this, and a lot of those schools that we talked to at nuCloud, like they had a Flash tour 4 years ago, and it's like, well, everybody knows Flash is bad. We got to do something else. Or we're looking
Sure.
at things like mobile, like Facebook, all these other
Right.
things, and they know we got to get up to speed. So it's like they invested all this money. It was a sunk cost. It got them 4 years. They got to go buy a brand new one.
Right.
And that's what
Definitely.
a lot of schools deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about what's expected then.
Mhm.
So I think students have an expectation that a college is going to have a virtual tour on their website, but what are they really looking for in that tour? What are their expectations, I guess, and what we're certainly going to talk about kind of wow features and those kinds of things too, but just to give us like kind of a scope of what's out there and what the expectation of a student might be.
Yeah, it's all over the board, and we've got tons of examples we're going to look through here because you'll
Mm-hmm.
see like how all over the board they really are
Mm-hmm.
from some really good examples. I think the standard thing, in my opinion, is people need some sort of central point, and we kind of build our central point off of the map.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you guys have built one that's kind of more this walking tour where it does
Right, right,
centralize on the
right.
map, but it's more. I think it probably keys more off the audio.
Right,
Is it's guiding you. You have this guided person taking you
right,
around.
right,
Where we go more of the free flow, which is there is no right or wrong answer. It's
right.
all about what you want
Mm-hmm.
and what you think your audience is going to want.
Yep.
Some schools that we talk to that are more in a rural setting, a college campus is a big thing to them, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
this big, gigantic university that I'm going to go spend it with thousands of students, and my graduating class had 100 kids.
Yep.
So you've got like those kind of expectations you're trying to wrap in, and then the whole range of them. So, but I think kind of the central things that people expect: pictures, descriptions. Most people key off buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Some people key off things like a tour guide, and then tell those
Mm-hmm.
experiences of a half dozen different students that are in different majors.
Right.
The big problem with those is they have a finite life to them, I
Sure.
think,
Yeah, definitely.
which causes a lot of expense.
Yeah. And I think what we thought about, and I'll send out the example when we're going through examples, but at RIT when we were looking at a virtual tour, we were saying to ourselves, we have a pretty good tour here on campus when students are here in real life, and is there a way to deliver that to students who can't make it to campus?
Totally.
And how do we deliver that using the technology that we have in the truest way? So trying to show students this is what it's really like if you were to come here for a tour. This is what it's really like. And I think we have a very different idea of virtual tour, kind of a different setup than other campuses have right now. But generally speaking, I think students are, they're asking that question. What is it really like? What does this campus look like? How big is it? Where are the buildings? What do the buildings look like? Those kind of simple things is why they're going to the virtual tour in the first place.
Totally.
And it's not just students, right? It's parents, and it's, it could be alumni who are coming back that stumble upon your tour. So I think in general, it's that, well, what does it really look like there, right?
Yeah, and it comes back to like, what are the goals you're really trying to accomplish? And if it
Yeah.
is recruitment focused, like I think any of the marketing angles, it comes down to one key aspect. It's like, what is your story?
Yep.
Like, what makes you special as an institution? Is it your gorgeous, beautiful campus because you're a national arboretum? Is it because you've got these few majors that people are, all into? Is it your urban setting? Like, what is it? And key off those stories, because that's why people come to your school instead of another one.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure those stories stand out very, very strong, because that's what makes you different.
That's a great point. Yeah. So if you're a school that has a large athletic program and the student body is really invested in that, part of your tour should be highlighting those athletic programs. If you're
absolutely
at RIT and you want to show where people play humans versus zombies and where the Quidditch field is, you might want to do that too. We don't do that, but I think it's something that the students looking at our school would enjoy. So
yeah,
it's a great point to kind of highlight what's different about you, because a lot of these virtual tours can start to look exactly the same. Same setup, different map. And so let's kind of jump into, maybe we can go into a few examples.
Sure.
And I think we have some do's, some don'ts, some different kinds of types of virtual tours. So I'm going to let you kind of run with what you think we should start with here. And I'll be happy to facilitate the examples out on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, we've got tons of examples. Just to kind of quickly, we've obviously outlined the whole program here, but I think it comes down to, because there are so many different approaches that people take, whatever you do, it has to be easy and simple. And we'll look at a couple of these that are just overly complicated. And because I might be a student that looks at 10 different schools and everyone is completely different on their virtual tour site, if I can't figure it out, there could be a possibility that I just X you off my list altogether, because it's like, well, this is really confusing and hard. I've got 9 other ones I care about that they're getting the job done. And I don't think necessarily photographs, videos, 360s, audio, like they all serve different means. I think it comes down to a couple things, like, do you have a great photographer? Do you have a gorgeous campus? Photography might be all you need. If you've got somebody like Seth who's an uber great videographer, like maybe you go that angle.
Right.
Some people are big into kind of the 360s. I'm personally of the opinion 360s cost a good bit of money. If I'm going to do that, I'm just going to spend a little bit more on video.
Sure. And it takes time, to sit there and click and look at the whole 360. I can see for a student who's very invested in the institution that is maybe planning on attending, so a student that's been accepted and is now looking to decide, they might spend that time to look at that 360 view. But a student that just wants to get a good sense of where they are, and you give them a 360 view, you're not really directing them as to what you want them to see and what's important.
That's a good point. I mean, we're talking about telling that story. Like, you've got to make sure you tell that story instead of hoping they pick up on it.
That's right. Yep. So now, if you're building a virtual tour that's specifically to yield students to enroll on your campus, then maybe you want to get into that highly detailed, maybe if it's a dorm room because they want to see what the space is going to look like. I think that there's different reasons to use that tool, I think.
Totally. And if you don't have budget for that, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with floor plans put up there. Because, I mean, ultimately, a video is cool, but if I'm thinking I'm going to live in this room, I want to know the dimensions. What is my couch going to fit in?
Right.
How am I going to lay this stuff out? Because I'm all excited about this decision I'm about to make. That kind of stuff matters, too.
Definitely.
I guess one thing I will kind of say, if you go more the map approach, which obviously we highly recommend, there's two approaches that people take. One is kind of using the Google Maps API smash up, right? They'll take a
Uh-huh.
Google map and then build stuff on top of it through like Google Map Maker. One of the reasons I'm not really excited about that, especially from the recruitment standpoint, is because we're trying to get people to schedule a visit to campus. We want to make it look sexier than Google Maps does. And we're working on a school right now. I'm not going to give any names, but like we visited campus. It's not that pretty of a campus. It's just not. The grass is kind of all orange, or yellow. The trees aren't immaculately taken care of. You can make that look better than it really does with a map illustration.
Sure.
And it's a selling point that if you're trying to get, and the marketing person we were talking to, he said, yeah, my job's to get them to come to campus. It's admissions job to get them to apply once they do that. And I mean, tongue in cheek, I'm joking here, but if you can't get them to make that next step because they're looking at a Google Maps, it's like, this isn't really that pretty. And it's kind of not ever really that pretty.
Yeah.
So a map illustration is a big selling point. It's a big marketing angle to make it look better than it really is. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's a great point.
We see a lot of pictures all over everybody's website that we always refer to as happy, preppy, smiling people. I mean, it's every admission person does it. If you look at any view book, it's got smiling people wearing school colors all throughout it, and it gets a point across. But we always talk about authentic. Like we always wonder, is this staged? Like, well, for the presentation, looks are reality at that point.
Absolutely.
And that's why people do that. Once they actually make that appointment and schedule that visit and come to campus, well, we got them to that point. Now let's let them see what it's really like. I don't know. I'm a little biased that way. Like I'd rather get them there than them never make that step anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So, what do we want to start with here?
Well, we've got some do's and don'ts here.
We do.
Let's power through those real quick.
Yes.
Optimize for speed. Obviously really important. 4 or 5 years ago, you saw all those interactive maps, virtual tours at like, what dial-up connection? Are you on, 56K? Are you on like that? Really not anymore, unless you're dealing with a lot of rural students. But still, speed is very, very important. If it takes a couple more seconds for you to load your flash map, that could be the difference between someone staying and leaving. So I think Flash is a bad thing. It's old technology. It's never going to work on mobile.
Right.
Keep it authentic, like we were saying earlier. Keep your call to action. Get them to take that next step. Innovate and keep it relevant. I think what this really means is don't keep it static. Like this is something that could be and should be evolving over time instead of one sunk cost that you make this huge investment in every 4 years and then forget about it. But yeah, don't Flash is bad. Like don't make it complicated. Don't make it complicated. I think let's look at some examples.
Let's do it. And I'm going to send out the 5 ways a virtual tour must tie into your recruitment process from the nuCloud blog. There's a lot of really great examples, and on the same lines of those do's and don'ts in there. So sending that out for you. Our first example, who we want to go with? We want to go with the award-winning.
Yeah, let's start at Bucknell.
Okay.
Bucknell won a Webby. You and I talked about this a little bit earlier. Like, I'm not a big fan of it.
Yep, I'm going to bring up a screenshot for folks. So if you're not following along on Twitter right now and you just want to have a quick peek, this is what we're looking at Bucknell. It's different, right?
Yeah.
It's different.
Community.bucknell.edu for anybody there it's interesting because, well, first of all, I just was saying how Flash is bad. This whole thing's built in Flash. Flash is good, but I don't know. I think modern web technologies have to get over the hump. And it wants you to say, I am something, and like choose what you are, which is cool. It makes it personal, but then all these markers start flying on the screen, and like, where do I go from there? Like, it doesn't tell me the story. It doesn't tell me where to start. And because it's so much different than anything I've ever seen before, I don't know. I just kind of find it really confusing.
Yeah, it's a good point too. You're going to try to be different, but you don't want something that's so different that you have to have a whole learning experience on how to navigate and how to use it. My initial reaction to it was, well, I went to school. For my undergrad, I went to art school. So it was interesting to me to be able to say, I'm creative and then see where the creative people might go. But then, and that was cool. That was really cool. But then to get to the next step, there wasn't anything simpler than that. So it wasn't, where's the dining hall? I had to tell them I'm thirsty, but I'm not thirsty right now. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, it gives you all these stops to kind of play around with, but it
Yep.
doesn't really tell me, well, which one do you want me to go to
Right.
specifically, or even like what building it is. It says this building is, or this location's creative. Well, is that like you said, is that a dining hall, or is that like, I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's very confusing. But obviously I will say, like, this one is definitely completely focused on admission. Like, it doesn't have any
Right.
alternate uses. And I mean, that's another angle I would encourage people to think about when you're building this is like, you want to build something that possibly or can definitely have multiple uses for two reasons. One, schools serve many, many audiences. Yes, admission is kind of the one we're focusing on now. Most of tuition, most of revenue each year is from tuition, so you've got to make sure you hit that. But alumni, current students, and all that are really important too. Secondly, if you're trying to build budget and support for something like this, if it supports multiple audiences, you can probably get budget out of them to help with it. Little creative angle there. Trust me, I've been in the fire. I know all the tricks of the trade. That's a great one. If you
It's
can
a
buy support from other departments, you can help do something really cool here.
Absolutely, it's a great point. And what we're seeing now, after building in-house a virtual tour for our admissions office, we had the intent to share it with the
Yeah,
university. But you take on that burden yourself internally, and you have all of the maintenance, you have all of the costs associated with it, on your plate, rather than it being a university-wide project. Now, whether things would really get off the ground, if you have
it's
too many
true.
people wanting to add things in, you have to think about your university that way. But for budget purposes, it's a great point. It's certainly something that doesn't have to just be admissions focused.
And I think that's a very, very important point. You don't necessarily, I wouldn't personally want to give away, let's put a committee together to get this thing done. No, we're going to still drive the boat in admission,
Right.
but we're going to build something that's going to be valuable for your
Yeah.
audiences too. Would you help us financially support this with your budget, and we'll give you access to it? And if
Wouldn't
you
that
need to
be
make
nice?
edits, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it helps them out too,
Right.
like,
Right.
I think a lot of people will be like, "Wow, you're gonna give us something we can use, and it's not gonna cost us any of our time." Cool.
Right. Yeah. It's a great point. Put your best salesperson in there for that conversation.
Yes.
So that was an example of a Flash site. And I think, no, we have a really interesting example of a HTML5 site from Phillips Academy, which is a boarding school, correct?
Yes, it is. But this thing is unlike.
It
I
is,
just hit play and the audio started going crazy. It's unlike anything else you'll ever see, though,
yeah,
because it's literally somebody walking along, all done in HTML5. Really, really cool presentation. Once again, very focused on the virtual tour aspect, not so much the interactive map angle.
right. Yeah, for me, this was a really heavy load time.
Hmm.
So, it's got a lot going on. But even from the first intro, which is absolutely beautiful. I mean,
It
this
is.
is beautifully done. But then loading into the tour, it took a long time for me too. So that was a concern for me.
Which is interesting because it's HTML5 and we're not used to like load times on anything but Flash.
It was strange, and yesterday I was having some technical difficulty, so I'm going to give them another shot. But thinking about when you're going to put that much, when you take a look at this tour, you'll understand what we're talking about. There's a lot going on this tour. When
It's
you put that
really
much
cool.
into it, you got to make sure it's accessible to your audience.
Totally, totally. It's one of those really, really cool things, but like, does it go too far? I don't know. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's well done. It's a masterpiece. But
Yeah,
like,
I
I
wanted
wonder
to go to
what they
Phillips.
spin on it.
I wanted to
Like,
go there,
yeah.
definitely. um, what's up next?
I think we've got a couple nuCloud examples. I'm going to
Okay,
kind of like stick out my chest here a little bit.
let's do it.
Obviously, I'm biased about this. The first one is the Western Kentucky University.
Got it.
Um, we're really excited about this one because this actually won a CASE award. So the a little bit of verification that it's really well accepted. It's a large campus. You'll see a lot of buildings there. You can kind of click on stops. They did a great job bringing in video into all these stops. I actually found this out just the other week that the student who filmed all these actually wrote their paper for their PhD on this experience. So
Wow.
I thought that was really, really cool. Totally unrelated, but it does a nice job of kind of giving the story of all these locations, and
Yep.
it's just nice, gorgeous map, pretty layout. It gives that multi-purposed. I can use it for multiple audiences. It's more the interactive map instead of the virtual tour approach,
Right.
though.
Right, and that's the first example of that we've seen. Unless you want to call Bucknell's a map approach, but that was a different kind of navigation approach
Yeah,
for a map.
it's definitely a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one here, we've got I tossed two nuCloud ones in here.
Yep.
The other one is more of it's a floor plan map, like Tanya at UALR Little Rock, Bowen. It's Bowen. Don't let me say it wrong. Tanya will kick my butt. So it's a law school, and the law
Yep.
school is in one building. It's a six-floor building, so they don't really have a campus per se.
Sure.
But they've done a really, really cool job of taking that building and breaking out into six floors and letting you kind of explore the locations on that campus. And because this is more of a grad school, the audience there is going to be more interested in the details instead of some of the
Right.
more undergrad recruitment focused air
Sure.
stuff.
Where's the faculty's office in relationship to where my class is? Where's the library? Those kinds of things, definitely. How
Right.
much study space is there?
Right.
All of those kinds of things. So, yeah, and that's the first floor plan kind of map that we've showed. But I think that's something that's going to be sought out more,
Hope so.
more and more so. And, we've thought a lot about talking again about the campus tour experience that you get on a campus will take you inside buildings. And that's not something that our virtual tour is right now. It's all outdoors. And so how do you take that same approach inside? So, and I think students will come to kind of expect that too.
I think so too. I think it's only a matter of time. And I mean, you can see this is kind of the first one we've really tried. And I think there's a lot of things we could really do to kind of improve on the experience. But it's really cool that I can kind of get in there. And if I'm looking at a dorm, maybe you only highlight 4 different floor plans, or maybe you go as far as showing here's where all the professors' offices are. But once again, that's where it takes it to the next level. Where it's not just serving the recruitment purpose. It's any visitor on campus might want to know where. A current student might need to know, where's my professor's office at?
Right. Definitely. Yeah, that would have been helpful to me as an undergrad, definitely.
Totally.
We've got an example of a home-built tour. And this is one of the examples that you've dug up for us. So you want to talk a little bit about University of Montana?
Yeah, this is a really cool, this is absolutely the campus map approach, and it's a
Very
really
much.
good job of all the different audiences are kind of covered. That I think they actually have a specific department. Maybe this is part of the visitor center that manages this thing. It's I don't like it. It's really cool. They've done a whole lot with it, but I almost feel like it's a little bit overkill.
Yeah.
The fact that there are all these tools in it where I can do measurements and
Right.
print. Like, what do I really need to print? Can't you just
Right.
put a PDF link at the bottom?
And it almost seems a little dated to
Yeah,
me. Yeah.
yeah. Because there's a lot of this stuff that you could do in kind of a Google Maps API, but some stuff that you can't. Like, you can actually click on some of these buildings and get like the details of it on the right hand side. The accessibility of it, which is really, really important. So there's a lot of details that this has in it that serves many, many audiences. There's some things they might be able to do to make it more admission focused, but I think it's a totally another angle that people should be mindful of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something you can really dig deep into, and still have that kind of very high level experience if you just wanted to navigate, throughout the different buildings.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a little overwhelming. And when one of your first points was keep it simple,
Keep it simple.
don't make it complicated. This one was pushing it for me a little bit.
I agree. I agree. There's so many options. Do I go to bus stops or art or arboretum
Yeah.
or wireless? Like it's cool all that's in there, and you probably need to know all that. But I'm almost of the mindset. Couldn't that be better done by having the same map in different locations with just those stripped down layers?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And while we're talking about something that's home built and maintained, I think it's a good time to kind of break and talk about what that means for our offices or for the institution on kind of a managerial side of things. So I know at my campus, we've been averaging 2 new buildings every year. We're expanding like crazy. It's crazy for our tour guides because we change the tour route on them all the time. And it's crazy, it's crazy for alumni. If you haven't been here in the last 5 years, you don't recognize the place anymore. So there's a huge interest in having virtual tour available for folks that need to see what's new, but it puts the burden on that virtual tour to stay up to date. So, what's the benefit in maintaining it yourself, or what's the benefit in having someone build it, going to them for the maintenance, or maybe having it handed over to you? You want to talk a little bit about what you
Yeah, I
think on that?
think you've hit the nail on the head. That one of the first questions that we ask people is like, you know, are you able to edit what you have now?
Mm-hmm.
Because what we've built at nuCloud is basically a content management system for an interactive map.
Great. Yep.
Where if you had a Flash platform, and what always happens, someone will donate $1 million and want to rename a building or something like that. And how do you go do that if you outsource this and it's this big
Mm-hmm.
old Flash thing, and you need to do that? Well, chances are you got to go pay them $100 an hour to go make this silly little edit.
Right.
Or if there's a picture of something, but for some reason you can't use that picture anymore, and that happens all the time at
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go and manage that?
Right.
And it's a big challenge. If schools need to be able to make these changes, whether they make them all the time or they make them once a year. You need the ability to do that. And I think as we look through these, like, yeah, there is a lot of debt in trying to build your own system and manage all this yourself, and then going the other route of outsourcing it and not having any control.
Right.
So we've kind of tried to build a happy medium of let's build a platform that you can use, but also, we can help and get in there too, and then get something up and running and then teach you how to use it.
Yeah, and I think a content management system is key, because text is something that I do think needs to be updated more frequently than folks might think. As you're emphasizing different parts of your brand message, or if a name changes, or a year later you think, how did we possibly let that go live? Why did we write that? So the text editing, photographs, I think if it's quality photography and there's that emphasis on making sure that you're hiring a professional photographer, photography can last, but I think video becomes dated really quickly. You can tell, I can tell what people are wearing and can tell you what season that was. And, so the video content, I think, gets dated, and it's great to have, but do you have the resources to be able to keep that fresh and keep that moving?
Right.
And it's something that, we considered putting together our tour, and I'll finally,
put a link. I don't see it in
share that out.
You should share the thing. It's awesome.
So what we did with our virtual tour is incorporated location-based media throughout the tour. It's driven by Google Street View, which if you have an urban campus, you might already have Google Street View available at your campus. If you're one of the campuses that Google's already come to do all of their walking paths and things, we had their trike come onto campus 2 years ago, and they did all of the walking paths with their Street View trike, which was really crazy, but it gave us all of those data points, which was pretty cool to have, and we just needed to figure out what we were going to do with them. So our thought was making all of the social media that we have available to us that does have a location point, we would pin that to those Google data layers, and hopefully it would be refreshing itself. So that's the thought of, our content. It's also, and that was kind of at its baby stages on what we were thinking of, but what we ended up with was a guided tour that you see now. So there's tour guides that will take you through different stops. You can stop it and start it. You can move through Street View on your own, and those the different Twitter streams, the different photographs, different YouTube videos will show up depending where you are in Google Street View, but it's very different.
It's very different. I like it. It's the one kind of, and it's nothing that you have any control of. It possible negatives because you are dependent on Google.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're 2 years old. If you go in and put up a new building, well, that's probably one of the things you want to highlight on a tour, and you're not even going to have it in there.
Absolutely. And we were doing construction at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole side of campus that has construction dug up on it. There's one little part right in front of our field house that we would have loved to have. And if you've ever dealt with the Google Maps folks, they're very nice, but they aren't willing to just hop on a flight and come out and take some pictures of your campus.
No.
So,
and sometimes they're really hard to get in touch with.
Yeah. We luckily had a former Google staffer on our admissions staff.
Nice.
And so we got the hookup there, but it's it was an interesting experience. It took a whole year from the time that they were on campus taking pictures till the time that we actually got the data from them. So as soon as we got it, it was a year old. But we had to do something with it, right?
Right. Hey, do what you can.
Yeah,
I think it's a different experience, but it's a simple, easy to use, it's a nice guided tour. And like we were saying earlier, you do a great job of like telling people exactly what is important and what you want them to pay attention to.
Right. Exactly. Very cool. So we've gone through, maintained sites. We've seen the floor maps. We've seen Flash. We've seen HTML5 sites. We've got more examples to show. So let's move on to one that I know you're a fan of. You want to talk a little bit about Gonzaga's site for us?
This is a really cool one. It's one of those ones like, gosh, I wish we would have done this because it's all HTML. Really, really cool. Great layout. They've kind of broken stuff into kind of a campus tour, academic buildings, residence halls. They've got a 3D map, a 2D map. They show you all the accessibility. I just feel like it's a nice, complete job that does everything justice.
Yep. And what I liked about it, and I'm bringing it up on the screen for folks now, is how simple the navigation is when you click on one of the buildings. You can see the info. You can see photographs. You can see where it is on the map. They have links to video. They have links all in there, very kind of crisp and clean. And, they show you right up front, this is what it is. Here's a description. If you want to dive deeper, you can. If not, click off and you're back in the map. So it was a nice job, definitely.
Yeah, it serves everything, and it serves all your audiences too. I think it's just a nice, complete map. That does everything, breaks it down to different. I can't say enough good things.
Awesome. You talked earlier about map renderings, and one of the things that I noticed on which UNC campus is the one that we're going to show? Is it Charlotte?
This is Asheville, I believe. No. Charlotte.
Is it Charlotte? Yeah, they have some really incredible renderings on this map. I didn't know if that was one of the points of interest that you had with it, but that was one of the first things that kind of jumped out to me was, wow, this is beautiful. Is this a photograph? Is this a rendering? Digging deeper, I can tell it is a rendering. But
yeah, it's a really nice, I believe it's a Google SketchUp that's just done really, really well. I think it's a great looking map. The two things I kind of don't like about it are obviously it's in Flash. But it's hard to do some of the stuff this thing does outside of Flash. Like when you hover over buildings, it actually highlights the building. Like that's really, really hard to do outside of Flash. I think the best alternative approach is kind of what we do or what Gonzaga does. We're having the stop markers.
Yeah.
But I also don't like when you start clicking into stops, like 10 different windows start popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And it just windows upon windows, which I think is a little confusing. But otherwise, I think it's a great, clean experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that complicated. Gives you a lot of different
Yep.
things you can do. But I do feel once you start digging into stuff, like whoa, like 5 windows start popping up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. They keep it simple on the forefront, but then it gets a little crazier when you're digging deep. We've got another award winner from Agnes Scott. They also have a lot going on, right?
A lot going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like a whole experience. With everything. They've got not just a map with stuff. They've got what is all this stuff? Academic, student life, athletics, virtual tour, resident. Like you can go visit, see all these different videos of all these different things, and then come into the video or the map and see it. This one, I know this one's a little bit dated because
Mm-hmm.
it's been out and around the block. I mean, I think everybody's seen this map before. There's a lot of good things. To me, once again, like it's Flash. Like
Yep.
I don't know, like Flash makes this stuff look so gorgeous, and these talking people overlaying stuff. It's really hard to do that outside of Flash,
Mm-hmm.
but you run into load times.
Yep.
It doesn't support mobile. There's just a lot of breaking points that the web's just kind of moved on.
Right. Right. Definitely. Um, we've got a few more. I don't want to jump into. I don't know if we should go through all of them or where you want to go next.
The real 3D virtual tour. It's just a YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
This is like everybody's probably familiar with Second Life.
Yep.
And what was it, 4 years ago? Like everybody was like, "Oh, how do we leverage Second Life?" And then social media came around, and we all forgot about it. Um, this is actually a company, and all of these, I'm not just trying to pimp nuCloud stuff here. Like, we're looking at different examples from all these different vendors. But this one is they built on top of Second Life. And I believe this is like the Air Force Academy,
Yep.
where you can like jump in Second Life and virtually go through campus, which is cool, but like if you've ever tried to use Second Life, you have to install this 300 meg application on your computer and
Yeah.
then hope you have a really fast internet connection. So it's not simple, it's not easy.
I really enjoyed the music in their YouTube
Yeah.
video. I was digging that. But
And I'm
yeah,
sure it's not cheap either.
yeah. Rendering in Second Life. We have our College of Business, I think, has an island in Second Life, or they did 3 years ago when I was
Yeah.
taking MBA classes there. But yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on there. And I like the 3D world idea, and I know a lot of students coming to my institution like that environment too. But if it's worth the investment, talking about what's this place really like, I don't think it's really giving you a sense of what your campus and what your campus experience is like.
No.
Awesome. And we've got a couple examples of non-higher ed examples to share with folks that are and even different approaches. It's so surprising to me how many different kinds of approaches you can have to a tour like this. So
Totally.
the first one's actually of the Capitol.
Yeah, this isn't another. I think this one won a Webby also. It's done by the same people that did the UNC Charlotte. So you'll notice kind of some of the similarities. Very heavy into Flash. It looks really cool. You can do a lot of stuff. Like it's really, really well done. But as you can imagine, something like this is not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you start clicking and stuff, and there's like 3D panorama, 3D renderings of buildings that you kind of fly around and stuff. Like it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense for something like the Capitol, but I'm sure it's not cheap at all. But it's another example to look at and get ideas from.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the last one we have is from a retirement community.
Yeah, I ran into this one and thought, well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Basic map, but because you think about it, like a retirement community isn't all that different from an admission office of a college, right? Like your grandma is going to pay probably like $50,000 a year to go live at a place like this.
Yep.
The same general approach, like how do we get people to actually come visit? applies here.
Right,
And
and it
so
has to be really simple because if I'm thinking of my
totally.
parents who are at retirement age and the level of tech savviness, you want something that tells you what to do. It's very clear, and I think this absolutely did a great job. So,
Totally.
awesome example to
And I
bring
think
in.
my favorite part is when you click into them and you get these 360 panorama. I think this is a good use of 360s
Hmm.
because you've got kind of the floor plan. And
Right.
I could see this being very, very useful for like student dorms.
Hmm. Hmm.
You've got this floor plan of what's the dorm room going to look, and then the 360 I can kind of spin around it.
Yep.
Um, very, very niche, but I think it's very relevant to how you're thinking about doing the stuff from that angle. It's a cool example, something a little bit different, a completely different vertical, and how they're approaching it.
Awesome. Yeah. We're coming up on the hour, and I want to talk a little bit about your return on investment for this. I think we all know why we should have a virtual tour, but and I think many institutions have something. But if
Mhm.
you're going to sit down and have the conversation to say this summer we really need to invest on an update or scrap what we have, do something new and is powerful, and you're going to those powers to be, how do you calculate return on investment? And I know you
Totally.
have a resource for us. So,
Yeah, because here's what's going to happen. If any of y'all are out there looking through all these examples, like you're probably getting all jacked up, all excited. Like I'm excited looking through them, and you're like, "Oh, that's so cool. We should absolutely do this summer." But you're going to go talk to your boss, the VP, your manager, whoever's ahead of you, and he's going to like, "Well, why should we do this instead of something else?" And that's where this return on investment thing comes into play because you can be like, "Look, because there's a real dollar value why we have to do this," and you're like,
yes,
"Oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's do it."
that's right.
Um, but it basically, it's a calculator that takes basic numbers that you should have working at a school for online marketing anyway. If you're calculating what is the value of an application, inner tuition, what is the average length of a student, what is the discount rate, percentage of applicants accepted, percentage of applicants enrolled who attend, so that
Hmm.
you can actually put a hard dollar amount on what is every single person who applies worth,
Yep.
and then kind of take that a couple more steps back with some estimates to say like, all right, well, having an interactive map virtual tour on our website is worth $60,000 per month. And then the question is not like, should we do this or not? It's, can we afford not to do this?
Definitely. That's
And it's a
awesome.
total different conversation.
Yeah, and even I think this calculator is great. We just sent out the link to that. If you're not thinking about all of these things that are factoring into this calculator, it's time to start thinking about how they relate to all of your online strategies. And we've provided you with a few other resources on how this is going to help increase visitors to your campus. Not to mention, if you're a Northeast school like I am, and the majority of students who are graduating and are college ready are in California and Arizona, they're not making trips to the Northeast just for any random college visit. They're relying on these things. And if you know where your market is and it's geographically located farther and farther away from you, if you're doing a push